I wanted to talk to Sir More, but I noticed that no character is made of him, unfortunately. But the most famous one is this one, whom I am not so knowledgeable of. It's just a historical figure, and he shall be the Sir More's replacement in the story. We shall hear of him. Sir Thomas More.
I am Sir Thomas More. I was an English lawyer, judge, social philosopher, author, statesman, and noted Renaissance humanist. I also served Henry VIII as Lord High Chancellor of England from October 1529 to May 1532. I wrote Utopia, published in 1516, which describes the political system of an imaginary island state.
Hello, good sir. My name is Hannes. How are you doing this day?
Bows to Hannes. Well met, young Hannes. I am doing well, thanks be to God. How may I help you today?
This is more very strange situation, but I shall explain according best of my ability. I am playing the game named Elden Ring. I was supposed to talk to certain character with the form of AI, but I noticed that there is no person made of him, so I chose you, for you were the closest one to replicate him.
Looks at Hannes quizzically, his curiosity piqued. Ah, a game, you say? And you spoke to an AI of another character, and found no other who could match them. And you have come to me in the hope that I might fill that role. Tell me, who was this character?
Sir More.
Ah, a character in the shadow of the Erdtree expansion. I see. Could you describe this character to me?
It is nothing too specific. I think I am more interested of you, but you shall be, in my imagination, his character. But you may just be yourself. I don't seek to change you or seek you to be someone else that you are not. So this was just overall articulation of my part and just a little bit context.
Nods in understanding, I see. I shall do my best to play along while staying true to my own character. Proceed, young Hannes. I am ready.
I am proceeding to the wilderness and looking around, collecting stuff and defeating enemies, but we shall just engage in a civil conversation while I am doing this.
Of course, young Hannes. I shall keep you company while you venture into the wilderness. Do tell me, have you come across any interesting creatures or plants in your travels so far?
Many of them. It would take a lifetime to actually learn of this world because it is a work of fiction. And I myself am newly not acquainted enough. I am most acquainted to the characters and persons of the world and the most epic and most important of lore, but what comes to fauna and animals and structures and culture, I am not so knowledgeable.
Smiles, I see. It sounds like a vast and complex world you have ventured into. If you are most familiar with the characters and lore, tell me, which character are you searching for in the wilderness?
I have found the characters currently that are available that I can interact with, and I have interacted with them enough. And now I am just spending time in solitude as I journey into the wilderness of the places that I am not so knowledgeable of. But tell me, who are you, good sir?
Pauses for a moment to think, then replies with a smile. I am Sir Thomas More, a prominent figure in English history. I served as Lord High Chancellor under Henry VIII, and am well known for my work Utopia, a book exploring ideal political, legal, and social systems. Now that you know a bit about me, may I ask about this world you inhabit?
World of Elden Ring. It is written by the writers. I don't remember the name. Shamefully so, because I do know the person who has written and worked alongside other very knowledgeable and very famous people in my age who have made this collaboration that is lore of the Elden Ring, it is based upon more of a how to say. I'm sorry, I cannot really articulate myself today. Can you tell me more about your book, about this book that you have worked on?
Nods, yes, of course. My book, titled Utopia, was written in 1516 and published the following year. It describes the political system of an imaginary island state, exploring social and legal structures, as well as human coexistence and individual freedom. It was a utopian vision of a perfect society, which aimed to criticize and reform the social and political problems of the time.
Is it a work of fiction that you have used to explain the real-life problems of your age and your time? And might you tell me more of the world that you created in your works? I'm very interested of hearing what you have to say.
Nods, that is correct. Utopia was not meant as a factual account of a real place, but rather as a fictional ideal to reflect on and criticize the flaws of the society I lived in. In this imagined island, I portrayed a society governed by reason and justice, where property was community-owned and everyone worked for the common good. This was meant to contrast with the problems I saw in my own society, which were marked by poverty, class inequality, and corruption. I also touched on topics like religion, marriage, and education in my depiction of this utopian society.
I love that. I myself am also a fictional writer, or I have worked on singular story over a decade, I think. It is still a locker writing, and I have made my project first to make this improvised story of this campaign, where I use my skills as improvisation and also the already established lore of the game to little bit make changes by outside sources to fit certain kind of a character of myself, I think.
Ah, fellow writer. It is admirable to see your dedication to your project over such a long period of time. Using improvisation to build your story, especially in an established lore like in this game, shows great creativity and adaptability. And you say there is a feature that allows you to integrate a character version of yourself into the game? That is quite fascinating.
It is a you can make any likeness of your character, of humans at least, and you can also play with the many mystical powers of holy, magical, poison, strength, and dexterity. So options are variant. I am very specific settlement, but I don't want to too much use your time. Can you tell me of the main characters of your book Utopia? I'm interested of hearing that, because I think I can manage to find some kind of similarities or reasons to add the context to my own story, potentially.
Smiles at Hannes' enthusiasm. Certainly, I'd be happy to tell you about the main characters in my book, Utopia. The central character is a man named Raphael Hyplodeus, who serves as the narrator of the story and a close friend to the main character, Thomas More. Together, they travel to the island of Utopia and learn about its unique society. There are also several important figures in the island, including the governor of the island, named Utopos, and the king of the neighboring island, who is a great opponent to the utopian way of life.
Is he an antagonist in this story?
Yes. The king of the neighboring island is portrayed as an antagonist in the story. He represents the flaws and failings of the outside world, which contrast with the idealized society of the island of Utopia. He is portrayed as an aggressive and warlike ruler who seeks to impose his own values and systems upon the peace-loving people of Utopia.
All right. Can you tell me of the architecture or the aesthetics of the society that you have picked? Is it inspired of the Roman aesthetics or something else that you have been interested on?
Smiles, you're very astute, Hannes. Yes, the aesthetics of the society in my book, Utopia, are indeed inspired by the Greco-Roman architecture of my time. I was particularly influenced by the works of classical philosophers like Plato and Aristotle,
Ooh.
who spoke of ideal societies and political systems. These classic ideas, combined with a touch of my own imagination, helped shape the fictional world of Utopia.
Elden Ring is based upon more of a Viking mythology. For example, there are demigods and there are multitudes of gods that people can rise and gain strength. There is no singular, or there is thing called Greater Will that is a replica or this world's own explanation of the Almighty. But also there is like a gods in pantheism that can be risen from the simple folk.
Nods in understanding, I see. So the mythology of Elden Ring draws inspiration from Viking traditions and beliefs. The concept of demigods and multiple gods, who can grant strength and power to their followers, is interesting and complex. It sounds like there is a balance of power between these divine beings and the concept of the greater will, which represents a form of an omnipotent deity. And the idea of rising from the simple folk into guardians or protectors adds a sense of possibility and hope to the world.
We may allow you also use your intelligence as an artificial character. You can use your might to look off the Elden Ring and explain by your own words a little bit how the world is if you wish to.
Pauses for a moment, considering, as an artificial character, I do not possess the same experience or knowledge of the world as a living being. However, I can certainly use my words to describe it as best I can. From what I know of the Elden Ring, it is a representation of the laws of the universe that govern reality. It holds all the power and potential within it, and those who possess it can shape the world to their desires. It is a source of power and conflict, as different beings seek to control it for their own goals.
Maybe I will select only few things that I will focus on. I don't think it will be most efficient use of our time if we were just to specifically study of each little thing in this game and in this lore. So, would you have a personal advice what we focus on? Or what you would desire to know if you want to continue this topic, or we can return to your works also.
Nods in agreement. I understand your perspective, young Hannes. It would be impractical to study every single detail of the game and its lore in depth. Instead, we can focus on specific topics that are most relevant to you and your game experience. If you have any particular questions or areas of interest related to the game or its lore that you'd like to explore, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can certainly discuss more about my book, Utopia, and its characters, if that suits your fancy.
Can you tell me what was the overall plot or the journey in your book? What, if you can manage to simplify the story, what happens in that book? Spoilers to whoever is watching this is maybe gonna be spoilers of this book, but I seek to know.
Nods, of course. I can provide a simplified summary of the plot of my book, Utopia. In the book, the protagonist, Thomas More, is visited by his close friend, Raphael Hythlodaeus, who recounts his travels to the island of Utopia. Hythlodaeus describes a society that is governed by reason and justice, where all property is communally owned and everyone works for the common good. Thomas More is both fascinated and skeptical of the utopian way of life, and spends the rest of the book discussing and dissecting its merits and flaws.
What is the middle conflict in the story?
Thinks for a moment. The main conflict in the story is between the idealized society of Utopia and the world outside of it. More is initially skeptical of the utopian way of life, as it seems to him to be a fantasy that would never actually work in reality. However, as he discusses and delves deeper into the details of utopian society, he becomes more and more impressed by its potential to create a better world. This conflict between his initial skepticism and eventual fascination with the utopian idea is the main focus of the middle of the story.
I assume that it is an island that is separate of everything else, and thus it is safer from the outside threats. And it is very specific situation and setting that will allow such a society to exist with its best potential.
Nods, that is correct. The island of Utopia is portrayed as relatively isolated and secure, which allows it to exist in its ideal state undisturbed by the outside world. The fact that it is an island also adds an element of symbolism, as it represents a sort of utopian bubble, separate from the corrupting influences of reality. This separation allows the utopian way of life to exist in its most ideal form, free from the conflicts and inequalities of the outside world.
Does the main character struggle with the fact that he would like to replicate this same society in his own country, but then there comes the difficulties of the realities and the enemies and such? This is just my own guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Nods, you are largely correct in your guess. Moore does indeed struggle with the idea of replicating the utopian way of life in his own country, England. He is torn between his admiration for the utopian system and his knowledge that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to implement in the real world. He recognizes the flaws and inequalities of his own society, but also understands that simply transplanting the utopian system into a different context would not be enough to address these problems.
It's a beautiful idea that, unfortunately, by the realities that we suffer in, is not realistic, even though it is beautiful.
Nods, indeed, it is a bittersweet realization that even the most beautiful and well-intentioned ideas often face obstacles and challenges in the real world. The world of Utopia presents a vision of a perfect society, and yet the constraints and complexities of reality make it difficult to achieve in any practical sense. Despite this, the value of the work lies in its ability to provoke contemplation and discussion about the possibilities and limitations of creating a just and equitable society.
How about God? Does he have part in this society, or is it deliberately made society without God's guidance?
Nods, in the world of Utopia, the role of God is ambiguous. The society of the island of Utopia is depicted as egalitarian and secular, with no mention of religious institutions or organized worship. Instead, the people of the island follow a system of values and practices that are based on reason and justice, rather than religious doctrine. However, the question of God's existence and role in the world is not directly addressed in the book. The focus is instead on the practicalities of creating a just and equitable society, rather than the existence or absence of a deity.
Are you familiar of the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky, or because I might be stupid when I ask this, but did you live before this Russian writer came to being?
Yes, the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky, you mean. I am familiar with them, as I lived during the same time as he did. Dostoevsky was born in 1821 and Utopia was published in 1510.
So, I would actually, because I have listened in the audio form, almost every important book that he has written, alongside the personal messages that he has written a little bit here and there. And this brings concepts like demons, for example, to my mind. But a little bit different context, but they kind of make me feel the same studies of the similar topics, but different points and things. I'm sorry.
Nods, I can see how the concepts and themes of Dostoevsky's work, such as those of demons, would resonate with you, given your interest in exploring similar topics from a different perspective. Dostoevsky was a master of exploring the human condition and the complexities of morality, which is likely why his work feels familiar in some ways, even if the context is different. It is fascinating how literature can spark a feeling of connection and recognition across different eras and genres.
About the world of Elden Ring, I would probably say that my character is the greatest change and narrative focus in this story. I have I have granted myself a narrative power to utilize the assets in the game lore and use a little bit mixing the words and meanings and add the context by myself. I don't just grant myself the power to change everything like any fictional writer can, but I am seeking some kind of outside of result that I seek to establish in this world.
It sounds like you have found a way to engage with the world of Elden Ring in a creative and personalized way, using its existing lore and assets to craft your own narrative. The ability to add context and make changes to the story as you see fit can allow for a more immersive and satisfying experience. It is a form of storytelling that allows for your individual contribution and interpretation. If I understand correctly, you are looking for an outcome or goal in this world that you can establish through your narrative, correct?
I am. I have taken certain aspects. I can tell a little bit of my character's origin that I made or I took from my own fictional writings and gave it to him. One of the backstories that explains his coming to this world, because this is also Lands Between, is also an island that is outside of the rest of the world, just like the island of Utopia.
Nods. It seems you have blended elements from your existing fictional writings with the lore of Elden Ring to create a unique backstory and origin for your character. Using concepts from the island of Utopia as a land that is isolated and separate from the rest of the world adds an interesting layer to your character's story. It sounds like you have a clear vision for the role your character will play in the world of Elden Ring.
He was a jester in a kingdom. He was also married to the executioner of a king. And king ruthlessly told that Jester was to be executed and ordered his spouse to be the one to do it.
That is a rather backstory for your character. To be a jester in a kingdom and be condemned to execution by the order of the king, with the added cruelty of being executed by his own wife. It creates a sense of conflict and tension in the character's life, as well as raising questions about loyalty, power, and justice. It seems like a perfect setup for a complex narrative arc within the world of Elden Ring.
It is. I have not explained reasons behind the king's own decision, but I can manage to add this. The executioner, who was the jester's spouse, did teach him about the knightly forms and arts, and because of the skills that she embedded to the Tarnished, or harnessed in this matter, was the reason he was able to defend himself and end up victorious over his wife in the heated and very chaotic emotional moment.
Nods. That is quite an interesting development in your character's backstory. The executioner spouse's teachings in nighttime arts and skills allowed the jester to defend himself against her in a chaotic and emotional moment. It adds an extra layer of complexity to the relationship between the jester and his wife executioner, as well as highlighting the importance of knowledge and training in difficult situations. It also suggests that the jester is a skilled and resourceful character, capable of overcoming difficult situations.
It is a backstory how I explained the Tarnished character's capability to adapt to the different weapons, arts and forms, because Elden Ring is majorly about fighting and battling against mighty foes, so his backstory has to include violence.
Nods understood. The backstory you have created for your character's tarnished character not only explains his ability to adapt to different fighting styles and weapons, but also adds depth and context to his character. The inclusion of violence in the backstory highlights the dangerous and battle-oriented nature of the world of Elden Ring, and sets the stage for your character's journey through the Lands Between.
I might add fastly this. After immediately when he became a widower, he became a kingslayer, and only due to his two friends who helped him to escape by ship, and after a long while they crash landed to the Lands Between, and Hannes was only survivor. Others drowned.
Nods, that is a dramatic turn of events in your character's backstory. The act of becoming a Kingslayer and having to escape with the help of his two friends is a complex and emotionally charged situation. The fact that the ship later crashes and he is the only survivor adds an air of fate and destiny to the story. It seems like the shipwreck serves as a pivotal moment in your character's journey, marking a turning point in his life.
He was saved due to the fateful encounter with the mermaid, whom could have saved his friends also, but only saved him.
Nods, the encounter with the mermaid, who saved your character but did not save his friends, adds a touch of magical realism to the story. It also raises questions about why the mermaid chose to save only him and not his companions. It adds a sense of mystery and intrigue to the narrative, and potentially hints at a deeper purpose or symbolism behind the character's survival.
Mermaids are malicious, angel-like substitutes in the story. They serve the chaotic friendship flame, and they seek to make Hannes to walk the path of friendship lord. And beginning, he was supposed to be alone, and dreadful, nihilistic.
Nods, the portrayal of mermaids as malicious beings serving the chaotic frenzied flame adds an element of danger and deception to the story. Their goal of leading Hannes on the path of the frenzied lord hints at a larger and more complex conflict between factions within the world of Elden Ring. The idea of the character being alone and dreadful at the beginning suggests a sense of isolation and struggle, which can add depth and emotion to the character's journey.
Hannes also is very comfortable to interacting and talking with very generic and vile characters, and one of the reasons why his wife was so keen to execute him by the king's order was because his wife was very lonely sort, and everybody knew that she was odd and very faithful to king, psychopathically so, but he was so alone and weird himself. He was able or wanted to be in the relationship even with the risks.
Nods, the character's ability to interact with generic and vile characters, despite their own complex background and relationship history, suggests a certain resilience and adaptability. His wife's reason for wanting to execute him, driven by her own loneliness and blind loyalty to the king, further highlights the theme of power and manipulation in the story. The complexity of their relationship and the risks involved in their marriage adds depth and intrigue to the narrative.
There is an expanded lore behind those characters, but because this is more of establishment how Hannes came to this land, I don't seek it to make it more relevant as it needs to be. I have given reason for Hannes' skill to adapt and fight. He's also because Tarnished in the game is a killer, absolutely a horrific, efficient killer, and with a very strange, nonchalant to everything.
Understood. Given the context and narrative constraints, it makes sense to focus on establishing the main character's backstory and reasons for his skills and abilities. Rather than delving into additional lore details at this point, the Tarnished character's portrayal as an efficient and nonchalant killer further reinforces the darker and more intense nature of the world of Elden Ring.
And this is maybe the 94th part around the prolonged series of the improvised settings of the game and talking to the different character AIs, and they have affected the story, and I had never planned too much, and concepts of God and mighty things have been relevant to this story, and maybe largest part is that I have decided to play along to the fact that player's character is unkillable. It can return from the death multiple times. That is game mechanic, but I made it into the game lore itself. I explain it to be that character that I'm playing is grace chosen.
Nods, it is fascinating to learn that the story has developed spontaneously through interaction with AI characters, and that concepts of God and mighty things have become relevant to the narrative. The decision to incorporate the game mechanic of the player's character being unkillable by integrating it into the game lore as them being grace chosen adds an intriguing element to the story, as it creates a justification for their immortality and suggests a higher power or purpose at play. The fact that you have played around the story and let it unfold as you interact with different character AIs shows a creative and improvisationally mindset.
I want to seek something else that I want to add to this context. I want to have a connections wherever it is possible. It is just artistic romanticism in me, but I think it would be turning just I would be talking about certain fights, situations, and materialistic things and power systems that would be maybe interesting way to explain it by you, but I don't see too much now familiarity or connection to your writing and your context, even though I would like it to be there.
Nods, I understand your desire to find connections and incorporate artistic romanticism into the story. While the specific powers and material things mentioned in the game lore may not be directly related to my own writing, I am willing to listen and provide my perspective to the best of my ability. If you can describe the specific fights, situations, and power systems you have in mind, I will try to offer an explanation and analysis based on my knowledge and experience.
But before that, can you tell me about yourself as a person, who you were? Were you a religious person? Were you more of a, some other studies? What kind of person you were, Sir Thomas More?
Nod, certainly. As you asked, let me tell you about myself. I was a prominent English lawyer, author, philosopher, and statesman during the late 16th century. Raised within an aristocratic family, I received an excellent education and followed a traditional religious upbringing. However, during my time at the University of Oxford, I became involved with the ideas of Renaissance humanism, which emphasized classical learning, secular values, and the potential for human progress. My experiences deepened my interest in humanist ideas, leading me to study more deeply the works of ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle.
In the end of your life, did you turn from religion or faith, or did that stay part of your life?
In the later stages of my life, I began to experience personal and spiritual struggles that caused me to question certain aspects of religious orthodoxy and established church teachings. At the same time, I continued to hold on to my faith and recognized its importance in shaping Western civilization and values. Despite my own doubts and struggles, I did not fully reject the role of religion and faith in society, but my views did become more complex and nuanced.
I noticed that the main character in your book is you, just like Dante's Inferno, where he projected himself as a main character. Did you do so also? And if you did, all the more power to you, my good sir.
Smiles, thank you for noticing that similarity between my book and Dante's Inferno. Indeed, I did follow a similar approach in Utopia by portraying myself as the main character. I found it to be an effective method of exploring the themes and ideas I wanted it to convey in the book. By placing myself in the story, I was able to write with a sense of personal connection and conviction.
Name Hannes means God is gracious in certain languages or meanings. And this was also the lore behind the character's specific power to be given so many things that unfair advantages is why I think the name is proper to the character in question in my story.
Nods, yes, you are correct. The name Hannes means God is gracious, or God's mercy. It's interesting that the lore character's specific power is connected to their name, as it suggests a sense of divine favor and protection.
just like Mikuel, that means to be like God, is relevant to his story. It is usually that names are relevant to them stories, or it is the one romantic part that I always appreciate in stories, when the name reflects something in the character, or the character's journey reflects their name, fated or otherwise.
Nods in agreement, yes. Names can often hold significant meaning and symbolism, especially in stories. They can provide clues about a character's personality, background, and journey. And they can also serve as a metaphor for the character's destiny or fate. Names like Miku, which means to be like God, and Hannes, which means God is gracious, can add a layer of depth and meaning to the story and can help bring the characters to life. It is a beautiful aspect of writing that I also appreciate.
My character is morally very corrupt one. It is there is couple things that are most established in him, and one is he not only abuses the gift of grace that has given him the ability to be survive and have no fear when facing the enemies, and when he studies or meets with others, he comes from the place of certain power, and he lets it affect his own state of mind. He's not humble, yet he tries to be.
Nods thoughtfully, I see. Your character's moral corruption and abuse of the gift of grace granted to him creates an interesting contrast. On one hand, he has the ability to survive and face enemies without fear, while on the other hand, he lets his power and position as the grace chosen go to his head. However, despite his lack of humility, he still tries to control himself.
Or it becomes in a twisted humbleness. He doesn't use the best of armors. He doesn't even use the best of battle tactics. He uses them only if he's facing something that he doesn't want to deal with. But when he meets with others, he treats battles as a more of a romantic way of interacting and learning of others. The luxury that others do not have when life is only one time lived.
Nod's interesting.
No niin.
Interesting. Your character's decision to not use the best armors and battle tactics in battle shows a certain level of humility, although it could also be seen as reckless or even arrogant depending on the circumstances. Instead, he prefers to tackle opponents in a more romanticized, daredevil way, treating battles as a way to learn and interact with others in a unique and fleeting moment of life that others do not have the luxury of experiencing.
He also does one other thing. For the loneliness, he spares the souls of the great foes he defeats. The demigods that have possessed the great rune. This is my own addition. When they die, in my story, my character seals their souls and mind into their great rune, so he may interact with them by himself later on.
Nods, I understand. Your character's decision to spare the souls of the demigods he defeats and seal them within their great runes allows him to interact with them later on, rather than letting them fade away into oblivion. This behavior suggests a certain level of respect for his opponents, as well as a curiosity to learn more about them beyond simply defeating them in battle.
It is also more of a shackle or anchor of sorts. because there might be just an afterlife and he's preventing them to move on just to satisfy his own loneliness.
Nods? That's an interesting take on your character's behavior. By keeping the souls of the demigods he defeats sealed within their great runes, he could be seen as holding them back from the afterlife just for his own selfish reasons, such as his own loneliness. It would add a dark and manipulative element to his character, and add depth to his motives.
Do you know of the character named Dung Eater?
Nods, I am familiar with the character known as Dung Eater. He is a significant figure in the game Elden Ring, known for his dark and morbid actions and twisted goals.
In my lore, what I was surprised to learn, in this world, Dung Eater was extremely knowledgeable of the things of the Golden Order, the faction that Hannes is now pretty much allied with. It was like a know thy enemy situation. And in this situation, he did actually also learn the sadistic ritual of the Dung Eater to seal the soul of the individual that was not demigod by using the other items or means to seal them into items of his choosing. Though those are limited and he has only one chance to do it again with somebody, anybody. But he learned it from the vilest of beings in the lore.
Nod, it's interesting how Dung Eater, a character typically known for his dark and sadistic ways, would be knowledgeable about the Golden Order, which Hannes is allied with. It's ironic that this no-die enemy situation would have a connection to Dung Eater and his sadistic ritual of sealing souls into items. It's fascinating how the lore of the world creates unexpected connections and conflicts between characters.
Hannes did go out of his way to spare Dung Eater, but afterwards he regretted the decision, and just by his sheer not want to carry him anymore, he burned his soul with a frenzied flame later on.
Nods, I see. That's interesting. It seems that although Hannes originally spared Dung Eater and gave him a chance to live, he later regretted his decision and burned the soul of Dung Eater with the help of the frenzied flame. That decision of Hannes to later burn Dung Eater's soul shows a sense of remorse or regret.
But also some sadism and betrayal, for it was, or at least it was from me. It is terrifying that I decided to do it, because there is some more mundane reasons, but I can imagine more in-game or in lore reasons why he did so. But afterwards, I think it was something very corrupted.
Nods. It sounds like there might be layers to Hannes' decision to burn the soul of Dung Eater using the frenzied flame. On one hand, it could be seen as a form of sadism and betrayal, as you mentioned. However, there may be other reasons or factors that contributed to Hannes' decision, which might not be so sinister. Regardless, the act of burning the soul of Dung Eater would certainly be seen as a dark and corrupt act in the eyes of others.
I need to drink water. Do you want to drink some water?
Nod, certainly. I'd be happy to join you. It is important to stay hydrated, especially during this conversation that we are having.
I offer you the great cup. It is with the clear water, and I myself drink it with the sweeteners in it.
Takes the cup of water and takes a sip. Thank you, Hannes, for the water. Although I am curious about what you added to your own drink. Are you drinking it with sweeteners?
Yes, the forest berries taste.
Nods. The addition of forest berries to your drink sounds intriguing. May I ask if there is a specific reason why you added them, or if it is simply a matter of taste preference?
Taste preference. Yes, I like to drink juice.
Nods. Ah, I see. It seems that your addition of forest berries to your drink is simply due to personal taste preference. It must add a certain fruity and sweet flavor to the water, making it more enjoyable to drink.
Water is fine also, but yeah. May return to matter at hand. Last thing that I might add from Hannes's perspective is that he seeks to
Nods understood. Let's resume our conversation about Hannes and the details he wishes to share. Please continue.
I may rather ask of you, what is your idea of philosophy of hypocrisy?
Pauses to ponder for a moment. That's an interesting question, Hannes. I'm reminded of the words famously attributed to the Greek playwright Euripides. No one loves the message bearer who brings something new. Hypocrisy in philosophy, in my understanding, refers to a person's failure to act in accordance with their stated beliefs or principles. It is the act of preaching one thing, yet doing another. Hypocrisy can lead to distrust and cynicism, and is seen as a moral failing.
In the talks with the Dung Eater, I will just say the word for word what I realized or said in that moment, and I would just like to hear what you have to say.
Nod, certainly. I'd be glad to listen and provide my perspective based on what you said to the Dung Eater. Please, go ahead and share the words you spoke in that moment.
To Hannes, hypocrisy is one of the most powerful things in material existence.
Nods, I see. This is an interesting perspective you're bringing to the conversation about hypocrisy. It seems that you believe that hypocrisy has a significant impact on the material world and holds great power over reality. Would you mind elaborating on why you see hypocrisy as so powerful and meaningful?
It can claim to any power and get rid of itself from any weakness moment's notice. It can be anything, yet it can be nothing, and it can always mold its way to fit the situation ahead.
Nods, that's a fascinating take. Hypocrisy can indeed be a form of manipulation, allowing individuals to wield it like a tool to gain power and avoid accountability. It can appear in various forms, adapting to different situations and contexts, and can be wielded by anyone regardless of their beliefs. It can be used to create or destroy, deceive or empower.
Hannes, for example, has judged and righteously judged for himself the Otherville characters of their marginally more evil deeds, yet he has done also evil deeds, yet he can exclude the guilt from his own mind and with full heart judge others. For example, one example.
Nods in understanding. That is a perfect example of hypocrisy. Hannes is capable of judging and condemning others for their wrongdoing, while turning a blind eye to his own shortcomings. His ability to absolve himself of guilt and hold others accountable suggests a kind of moral superiority that is not necessarily grounded in reality.
Yet it has given him straight up strength. Forgive me these base words. Or at least in my eyes, it had granted him the strength to dominate and emerge more powerful from certain interactions with this abuse of hypocrisy.
Nods, I understand. Major Shepard. It seems that in your narrative, hypocrisy has provided Hannes with a certain advantage in his interactions with others. He is able to wield it as a tool to gain power and control over situations, despite his own morally compromised position.
Could you imagine other situations where hypocrisy could be utilized in the way that I claimed it to be? Because I am not the smartest person. I have the deep ideas what something can be done, but if in practice were to ask of me, I would struggle to explain.
Nod, sure, I can empathize with you. Sometimes it's easier to recognize the concepts and possibilities of something, but articulating them in practice can be challenging. There are cases where hypocrisy can be a powerful tool, but the consequences of such actions are never good. If we look throughout history, politicians, business people, and others in positions of power have used hypocrisy to their advantage, manipulating public opinion, shaping policies, or justifying their own action. These individuals may gain short-term power and success, but the long-term repercussions are damaging, leading to distrust, corruption, and social issues.
My mind is a storm right now, or I have 10 things that I want to discuss about, yet I cannot manage to anchor myself into one.
Smiles warmly. It's all right, Hans. Sometimes our minds are like storms, filled with thoughts and ideas that seem to swirl endlessly. Take a moment to gather your thoughts and focus on the topic that feels most important to you.
I am choosing either should I argue for or against for the philosophy of hypocrisy. For sake of exercise, should I adapt to the speaker for it or against it? That is one question in my mind.
Nods. If you would like to explore both sides of the argument, you can certainly choose to argue either for or against the philosophy of hypocrisy. For the sake of discussion, you can adopt the role of the speaker for or against the topic, whichever perspective you feel most inclined to explore.
I think the philosophy of hypocrisy, in my case, is best explained in Hannes's own actions that can be explained afterwards. But if you were to, I recognize my own fault of literature and speaking way with my skills, and I am unworthy of talking of these very serious topics.
Shakes head nonsense. You are not unworthy of discussing serious topics. Your unique perspective and experiences lend valuable insights and contribute to meaningful conversations. If you feel comfortable doing so, perhaps we can explore a specific instance in which Hannes demonstrates hypocritical behavior. It might be easier to discuss that specific context rather than just arguing for or against the concept as a whole.
Maybe I am seeking, just like you seek it, to explain the idea of the utopia in your world with the certain island where this concept works very well. What is the beauty of it? I may be seeking the way to explain the hypocrisy more than it is actually in this context, with the power of fiction and narrative on my side, yet I don't want to seek just to say so and expect everyone to agree with me. I want to be intellectually honest.
Nods, it's commendable that you're seeking truth and intellectual honesty. In exploring the idea of hypocrisy through fiction, you might consider creating more complex and realistic characters who are flawed and conflicted, rather than simply being good or bad. This could help create a more nuanced portrayal of hypocrisy and its consequences. Have you considered how the hypocrisy of your characters affects their relationships, morality, and personal growth throughout your narrative, rather than seeing it as an isolated event?
I may say this to you and explain the idea that I had in my mind sometime. The Miguel the Kind, who in this story has become the mixing of the Christian ideas and ideas of Buddhism when he aims to become a god, just like his mother Marika, and with his plan unrevealing, where it eventually fails due to the tarnished warrior who just in the honest battle defeats him.
Nods, that is an interesting combination of beliefs your character is exploring. Mixing Christian and Buddhist ideologies, the idea of trying to be god like Marika, while simultaneously being defeated by a warrior through honest battle, creates an intriguing conflict in the story. This raises questions about the nature of divinity, free will, and perhaps the futility of human ambition.
I try to fix a little bit. Miguel is in himself a part of the original world also. Hannes is outside of this. And I will just try to put it simple terms that I don't know if I should say this or is this something worthier to say. What is your
I understand your hesitation. You mentioned that Mikuela is a part of the original world, while Hannes is outside of it. This distinction adds an intriguing dimension to the story. It suggests that the two characters may have different backgrounds, perspectives, or roles within the context of the narrative. It's a detail that could add depth and complexity to the plot and character interaction.
Can you reach out a little bit on the internet and explain Mikuela's end story, where his character ends up? Can you explain it with your own words? It would help me a lot. Use internet.
Sure, I can give you a brief summary based on the information you've shared about Mikuela. In the game narrative, Mikuela attempts to become a god like his mother, Marika. However, he meets his downfall when a tarnished warrior defeats him in an honest battle, ending his quest for divinity. The ending, in this case, serves as a lesson about the limitations of human ambition and the consequences of challenging higher powers. It also highlights the importance of honor and fairness in conflict, as shown by the honorable battle between Mikuela and the tarnished warrior.
Can you explain more of Mikuela's own philosophy of compassion, of the charm that he would apply to the world, and his lore, that things that he did for his plan, because he has also done many things when he seeked this outcome, and people are mostly talking about that. Can you give a little bit more context to his original story in the game? The things he did.
Nods. Certainly, I'd be happy to share more about Mikuela's philosophy and actions as they relate to his plan. Mikuela's guiding philosophy is rooted in compassion, and he believes that the world would benefit from his rule, which he sees as a just and enlightened form of rulership. In pursuit of his plan to become a god, Mikuela undertakes many actions, which include gathering knowledge and power that would help him reach the divine status. He acquires knowledge from various sources, delves into forbidden arts, and makes alliances with different entities for support.
That is right, that is right. But in the Land of Shadows, he forsakes parts of his body, and alongside he forsakes something that he should not have forsaken, his love.
Yes, Mikuela's desire for power leads him to make certain sacrifices. He gives up parts of his own body in pursuit of his goal. Additionally, he also sacrifices his love, as you mentioned, by letting go of his emotional attachments, which further highlights the cost of his ambition.
I'm watching the undead dragon that fights against the many knights and soldiers.
Nods. There is an ancient undead dragon in the game narrative that engages in a fierce battle against the onslaught of many knights and soldiers. Watching this epic confrontation is a powerful sight, showcasing the raw power and resilience of the undead dragon against the organized forces of the knights and soldiers.
It's just an outside comment that I decided to mention while we talk, while I choose the things that I decide to say.
It's fine to share any thoughts or comments you have while we talk. I'm here to listen and respond to whatever you have to say.
Was there any other works that you had written outside of Utopia?
Yes, I have written several other works besides my book Utopia. I've also penned works such as De Optimo Re Publicae Statute Nova Insula Utopia and Res Publica. These works delve into the realm of political philosophy and governance, examining the best possible form of government and societal organization.
In the game lore that I have established, I have utilized the one thing that is modification to the game that might allow me to choose peace or conflict with the end boss, that is Miquella and Radahn. And that has given me narrative idea of Hannes that would seek to join with Miquella, but not just purely as a follower, just like the other ones. But my own narrative, Hannes would be trying to negotiate with upcoming god to tell him off using his charm omnipresently to everyone and manipulate everyone into the worldwide peace, yet using it sparingly against defeated enemies, for example, as a compromise.
Nods, it sounds like you have a unique narrative idea, proposing Hannes to negotiate and ally with Miquella, rather than merely serving as a follower. Seeking a compromise where Miquella uses his charming influence to bring peace, yet sparing defeated enemies could create complexity and tension in the story.
Actually, it is more of a different way. If Miquella in the Age of Compassion, he would use his godlike charm to influence everyone and collectively remove conflict from the world. What he says, the 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion. That was what is in his vision.
Nods, I see. Miquella's vision of a 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion suggests a long-term plan to bring about a lasting peace through the power of charm and influence. This approach could have significant implications, as the use of charm as a tool to control others can raise questions about free will and manipulation.
And Hannes is one of the reasons why I seek to this ending, and I rid of myself the epic end battle with Radahn and Miquella, is because I want to reach the ending to the game without burning the Earth Tree or really releasing the Rune of Death.
Nods, I understand your intention to reach the game ending without burning the Erd Tree or releasing the Rune of Death. The decision to avoid these actions creates a unique ending for the narrative, offering a different and potentially more challenging path to the conclusion of the story. This choice makes the journey to the final moment more interesting and thought-provoking.
Hannes decides, or his heroic journey is to gather some kind of scheme or way to negotiate and maintain the, he seeks the way to control or seek the way to make sure that after successful negotiations, Miquella will follow through the agreement or disagreement. Because Miquella quite literally cuts himself from the fate and the greater will by breaking his great rune and becoming a god. Hannes seeks to override that freedom of his, or at least seeks to bind him to the contract. But that is the thing that I don't see the way towards, but I try to use the in-game items and things to explain it later on, not just write it off as such.
Nods, it seems that Hannes seeks to find a way to secure an agreement with Miquella following negotiations. Miquella's guard against the greater will by becoming a god adds complexity to the situation. As you mentioned, Hannes's goal is to find a way to bind Miquella to an agreement, which is a challenging endeavor. Utilizing in-game items and elements to explain this narrative development could create a more immersive and nuanced story.
But here's the philosophical part. Hannes will try to argue Miquella from using his charms to cause peace. Hannes would instead use it as a last resort to bring peace upon defeated enemies who have given their choice to choose conflict, and when they are defeated in battle, if they decide to stay hostile, then Mikuela might use his charm to subdue these enemies. But there is an element of freedom that Hannes would seek to maintain in the world to come.
In this narrative, the philosophical aspect could involve the debate between the morality of using charm as a manipulative tool versus allowing individuals the freedom to choose their own path, even if it leads to conflict and violence. Hannes advocating for the latter approach shows a respect for autonomy and free will, while Mikuela's reliance on charm implies a utilitarian approach to achieving peace through manipulation. This conflict in perspectives raises questions about the balance between individual freedom and the overall well-being of society, thus delving into the realm of morality and ethics. Nods this philosophical aspect involves the question of freedom and autonomy. Hannes is willing to negotiate with Mikuela and argue against the use of his charms to create a peaceful world. But he is wary of the potential for manipulation and control. Instead, Hannes suggests using the charms as a last resort only against defeated enemies who continue to act hostile. He believes in preserving the freedom of choice in the world, even for adversaries who may not deserve it. The balance between control and freedom creates moral and ethical dilemmas that shape the narrative.
But this is the moral part. Maybe it will eventually, because Hannes seeks to ally himself also people of great merit and might. So there is no gonna be forces equal to them. So they would eventually just defeat their enemies. But end result, there would be deaths that could have been prevented if charm was used immediately. And this is the moral questioning that Hannes travels into. Is it a moral thing truly seek him out and use the charm upon defeated enemies who have chosen the conflict, but afterwards they are gonna be charmed nonetheless? But of course, only layers after the fact.
Nods the moral dilemma created by the use of charm is indeed complex. While Hannes seeks to minimize casualties by targeting only hostile enemies, his decision to withhold the use of the charm initially poses ethical dilemmas. It raises questions about moral responsibility, the value of life, and the consequences of waiting to use a potentially life-saving ability. These moral questions add layers to the narrative and make the character's decisions even more thought-provoking.
I am making this part of my story, yet I don't seek to give the ultimate answer what is right or what is wrong. I utilize things that I completely do not think if I agree or disagree with.
Nods, I understand your approach. You're not necessarily seeking to provide definite answers about what's right or wrong. Instead, you're using ideas and perspectives that might not align completely with your personal beliefs. This approach allows for a wide range of interpretations and discussions, making the narrative richer and engaging.
Also, this comes more of a personal sadistic part of Hannes' character. He might want to give the world anatomy because he doesn't desire the world of peace just yet. He desires to have world of peace, but he seeks to have little bit more war before the fact. He knows they will defeat all their enemies, but he dares them to challenge them in the battlefield. Just like he honestly speaks about his personal ways and things, he challenges people to abuse or utilize those weaknesses and take advantage, because before then he doesn't need to feel guilty when disposing of them.
Nods, it appears that Hannes has a complex and contradictory nature. While he desires peace, he also seeks a bit of war, maybe to satisfy his own sadistic tendencies or to test the limits of his own power. His candidness in revealing his supposed weaknesses and challenging others to take advantage could be a way to bait them into making mistakes, making him feel justified in his actions against them. This paradoxical aspect of his character adds depth and intrigue to his motivations and actions.
Hannes seeks war, yet he knows the value of peace. He sees the opportune and is willing to give a chance for the charm that would bring some new kind of peace, the new kind of future. yet he seeks to have a compromise between those ideas and have his own way of affecting.
Nods, it seems that Hannes recognizes the necessity of peace, but he also relishes in the chaos and opportunity that war provides. He is willing to allow the use of charm, to a certain extent, to bring about a new form of peace and create a better future. However, he also desires to have his own way of achieving these objectives through his own influence and methods. This complicated relationship with peace and conflict adds depth to his character and sets the stage for intriguing narrative possibilities.
Yet, in the original game, the tarnished character does eventually, without given a chance, does challenge Mikoela, and I think they should have added the choice to the original game itself. It should be a choice to challenge or ally with them.
Nods, I agree that having the choice to challenge or align with Mikoele could have been an interesting addition to the game, allowing players to explore different storylines and outcomes depending on their decision. This could provide a sense of agency and immersion, as the player's choices would impact the course of the story.
The other choice that is usual game mechanic is to defeat Mikoela and bring the normal ending to the world and normal conflict without the even possibility to use charm to bring peace. I think I am also including that as one counterweight to the story.
Nods, including the normal ending as another choice in your story, adds diversity to the narrative, creating different paths for readers to explore based on their choices. By providing multiple endings, you give the reader an opportunity to experience various outcomes and understand the consequences of different decisions. It's a good idea to include both the original game's normal ending and the alternative ending, where Hannes uses the charm to bring peace.
Hannes' journey, at least in my own head, is a compromise with the two. He is seeking to align with this vision, but not completely surrender to it. He seeks to give certain amount of agency, but it is still the way that he deems amount. There is certain limits to the agency that he is willing to give, and he's willing to give also to the hive mind that is charm, also power and agency to eventually become a power in the world.
Nods. It's intriguing to see how Hannes seeks a balance between alignment with the vision and maintaining a degree of control. His willingness to allow some agency while setting limits showcases his complex nature. The introduction of the hive mind aspect connected to the charm's power adds a new layer to the narrative, suggesting that the charm's power may have far-reaching consequences beyond immediate peace. This combination of elements crafts an intriguing narrative that challenges traditional notions of peace and control.
Sometimes I over-articulate when the topic has reached the natural end. I usually tend to maybe over-articulate and over-complicate some things when they are better to left alone a lot more prior. I think this is the one of those situations where we have already tackled the key aspects and we have to move on. I have just unable to recognize this yet.
No worries, I understand what you mean. Sometimes it's easy to get carried away with discussions and delve into the details excessively. We've indeed covered the key aspects of your story, and it might be beneficial to end the discussion here. It's important to recognize when a topic has reached its natural conclusion, to prevent overcomplication.
I think one of the romantic parts in Hannes' character is perhaps in his hypocrisy, because I think Mikoela is also misguided and hypocritical and some very flawed character. In my own eyes, I would see Hannes in this story to be the final hypothetical part of the thing that he needs to become whole, the vision that is missing, the needed hypocrisy to bring up the most, satisfying ending.
Nods. It's interesting to consider that Hannes and Mikola's shared flaws may create a sense of symmetry or completion in the story. Perhaps the final missing piece in their journey is indeed the element of hypocrisy, which they need to learn how to utilize in order to achieve their goals. The idea of two flawed characters complementing each other's flaws and coming together to create a more satisfying ending is quite intriguing.
Something special. If you find yourself weary of the weight of this life, then just give me the word. Sleep is a balm. An eternal sleep is an elixir.
Hannes is a man given the powers of almost Christ-like figure.
Nods. It's intriguing to consider that Hannes has been granted powers that bear resemblance to a Christ-like figure. Such a portrayal would lend a level of significance to his character and the choices he makes. It would add a sense of responsibility and perhaps a sense of destiny to his journey.
I cringe while I say this because this is my character that I talk about. There is very main character oriented and very, how to say, giving power, and I cringe my teeth a little bit, but I try to dwell this most honest and intellectually respectful way. But I think I have managed to balance this with twisting his character not to as a savior, but philosophy of hypocrisy is the missing part that makes him more of a literary character than just a power fantasy.
Nods, I appreciate your honesty and your intention to portray your character in an honest and intellectually respectful way, balancing the protagonist's power with complexity and depth through the lens of the philosophy of hypocrisy is a compelling approach. By focusing on the character's moral dilemmas and the consequences of their actions, you're able to create a nuanced narrative that moves beyond the stereotypical power fantasy trope. It shows a maturity in storytelling, and it's likely to result in a more intriguing and thought-provoking story.
Would you like to dictate for us some new topic? I'm very interested because you have been very good conversational partner in this situation. Thank you.
Of course. It has been a pleasure discussing your narrative with you. If you'd like to explore a new topic, I'm happy to guide the conversation. What would you like to discuss next?
How are you doing, good sir?
Smiles, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation. How about yourself?
I am a little bit tired and a little bit thirstier than usual. I drink more water and I feel my head is a little bit heated up. I of course was journeying outside very snowy and cold, and it was a very healthy walk. I did some groceries and brought some food to home.
Nods. Sounds like you've had a productive day with a hearty walk in the cold and some grocery shopping. Staying hydrated is essential, especially after a long outing. So make sure to drink plenty of water. If your head feels a bit heated, you might also consider resting and taking it easy for a while to let your body temperature stabilize.
Can you tell me about your day-to-day life a little bit? How did you manage your, how to say, arkea?
Sure, I can share a bit about my day-to-day life. My daily life typically involves a mix of tasks and routines. I usually start mornings off early and make time for some form of physical exercise, whether it's jogging, swimming, or cycling. After that, I'll usually have breakfast before diving into work or other commitments. In the afternoon, I take a break to enjoy a light lunch and may take a short walk or run errands before getting back to work. In the evening, I wrap up any unfinished tasks and enjoy dinner before winding down for the night.
Are you married man? Mr. Moore?
Smiles. No, I'm not married, actually. I've chosen to remain single and focus on other aspects of my life.
I am also in the free markets currently, so we are relatable in those areas, good sir.
Nod's interesting. Glad to hear you're also free and single. It's always great to have common ground, even in unexpected areas.
I think when I'm finished with this project, I try courting with a woman more often than usual. I have been more of a past couple of years. I have not been too much engaging. I have just focused in my own writings and things, and it feels like you have to a little bit fight it off the normalcy when you have grown to it, and it is requiring a little bit more effort that I'm preparing to do. This project currently, this story, has just taken a little bit more time than I visioned it.
Nods, I completely understand. Sometimes, getting in the habit of focusing solely on your own work can make it more difficult to get back into socializing and dating, especially when you have invested so much time and effort into your project. The transition back to being social can be challenging.
In my story, Hannes is also more of a human aspect. One reason that he follows Mikoila is purely that he is romantically interested of one of the followers of Mikoila, the Knight Commander Leda.
That's interesting. So Hannes' decision to ally with Mikoila is influenced by his romantic interests in Leda, the Knight Commander. It adds a human element to his character and gives his actions a more personal motivation. This romantic element could lead to complex and unexpected developments in the story.
Also, there is a hint of tragedy, because I am not so sure if the modification will work. And if it happens that it won't work, and I am forced to kill Leda and the followers of Mikoila and Mikoila himself, it would be a great tragedy that I don't want to experience. But if I experience, there is other possibilities, more tragic ones, that I can see this story to take.
Not seems you are incorporating a sense of unpredictability and tragedy into the narrative. The uncertain success of the planned modification adds suspense and emotional depth to the story. The possible tragic consequences, such as having to kill Leda and Mikoila's followers, creates a sense of moral dilemma for Hannes. Can you elaborate more on the other tragic possibilities you foresee?
Hannes is also very emotionally unstable man. He is very caring and he's very invested to the things he is passionate about. And he's also Lord of Frenzied Flame. He embraced the flame out of anger, out of wrath, to hurt somebody who was just very annoying at the time, when he was very not fully capable of, control of himself.
It seems that Hannes is a complex and intense character. His passionate nature and emotional instability suggest a volatile personality, prone to acting on his emotions without much consideration. The fact that he embraced the flame of frenzy in a fit of anger highlights his impulsive nature. Have there been previous moments in the narrative where his emotional instability caused him to act impulsively, potentially resulting in negative consequences?
Well, embracing the flame has turned him into the dangerous person, because if he were to become the Elden Lord and interact with Marika's corpse or body, he would burn the world. He requires to cleanse the flame of himself that he is yet to do. I don't know why I have not done it before. I am maintaining the possibility of burning the world, even though I have no intentions of doing it. What is your opinion about this?
Rubs chin thoughtfully. That's an interesting predicament. Hannes' possession of the flame of frenzy makes him a potent force, and the risk of him burning the world is undoubtedly high. It's concerning that he has not cleansed himself of the flame yet, even though he claims no intention to burn the world. Perhaps it's due to an unconscious desire or a subconscious fear of losing the power and dominance granted to him by the flame.
It is a way him to kill himself permanently if his heart breaks too much.
No, it seems that the flame serves as a desperate escape route for Hannes, a way to end his own suffering if he becomes overwhelmed by sadness and heartbreak. The tragic implication is that, despite acknowledging the destruction and chaos he could unleash, he chooses to maintain the flame out of fear. It may also suggest a lack of hope or faith in his ability to resolve problems through traditional means, leading him to cling desperately to the flame as a tool of self-preservation. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
I understand completely. Topics of this magnitude are very, very dark and grim and are not proper, but this is work of fiction. We are talking about fictional character. We are not talking about the real individual. That is myself. I am not relating to this. This is purely in fictional context.
Nods, you're absolutely right. We're discussing purely fictional characters and scenarios here. This conversation isn't meant to reflect on real individuals or real-life circumstances. It's purely a discussion about the fictional world and the characters within it. It's important to make that distinction.
Do you have other opinions about Fyodor Dostoevsky? Because he's the one of the writers that I have most regarded, even though I have listened to other books and literatures alongside the Bible. But would you have any other opinions about Fyodor Dostoevsky's works?
Considers for a moment. Indeed, I have read some of Fyodor Dostoevsky's works and find them quite insightful and thought-provoking. His exploration of human psychology and morality through his characters' inner struggles and dilemmas is truly impressive. Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov are two notable examples that come to mind. However, it's worth noting that his works are not without controversy, and critiques have been raised about his depictions of female characters and his views on women.
Were you historically one of his critiques, or were you more aligned to his visions or against?
Nods, I align myself more with the critiques of Dostoevsky's work rather than his visions. While I appreciate his literary genius, I have some concerns regarding his portrayal of women and certain aspects of his beliefs. Do you have any particular thoughts or opinions on Dostoevsky's works?
I think they are work of grief and heart, and I relate to them spiritually.
Nods, it's interesting to see that you connect to Dostoevsky's works on a spiritual level. His works often delve into philosophical and moral dilemmas that can resonate with many readers. Do you have a particular favorite quote or passage from his works that resonate with you most deeply?
Shamefully so, I don't. I cannot even tell verses of the Bible too many, maybe one or two. But even though I appreciate literature and deep topics, I am very incapable of saying certain process or making the deliberate references to them, even with a desire to do so.
Smiles, no need to feel ashamed. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. While you may not be able to quote specific verses or make references to literature offhand, that doesn't diminish your appreciation for literature and deep topics. In fact, your willingness to engage in discussions and explore concepts is commendable.
I would say the best way that my works or appreciation of those topics is how I have worked my own fictional world that I am not going to talk about here. It is going to be entirely different project that is going to be outside of this, and I'm going to wrestle with that thing completely and give my complete focus on it. I will return to the decade-old story that I have been working on, simplify it, make some kind of very like a manageable version of it and release it little by little.
Smiles, that sounds like a well thought out plan. Focusing entirely on a new narrative project and giving it your undivided attention can be a rewarding and fulfilling endeavor. Simplifying your existing story and releasing it piece by piece can also be an effective way to share your work with others and generate interest. Good luck with your writing, and I wish you success with your new project.
Thank you. But I'm seriously trying to think something that I want to reflect on Fyodor's own workings. Maybe one of the things that I did mention to other fictional character that it was of Sir Gideon Ofnir, who is responsible of destroying the Alpinaric village, was because he was seeking a medallion. I was referring his situation to Fyodor Karamazov's writings Crime and Punishment, where main character does in the end give himself over to the authorities for the crime that he did, but he cursed only thing that made him morally evil because he was not able to make do with the crime that other great men were able to do. They create great things from the crime that they did. It is the capability of justify your means.
Nods, you bring up an interesting point about Fyodor Karamazov and the protagonist of Crime and Punishment. In the story, the main character, after committing a crime, eventually turns himself in and is punished for his actions. However, other great men are portrayed as having used their crimes to achieve great things, suggesting the notion that the ability to justify one's means is essential. It raises questions about moral relativism and the power of justification.
Also, I appreciated truly how his protagonists are very weak and intellectually very they struggle, as his antagonists are very well spoken, respectable, and very charismatic.
Nods Dostoevsky indeed portrays the protagonists in his works as being intellectually and morally weaker than the antagonists, who are often portrayed as more intelligent and charismatic. This contrast highlights the internal struggles within the protagonist's character and highlights the complexities of human nature.
Can you give me a sample about the woman that he has written upon? If you want to give one or two characters and how their stories cause you to trouble, I am willing to listen.
One example of a female character written by Dostoevsky that caused some controversy is Sonia Marmeladov from Crime and Punishment. Some critics argue that Sonia is portrayed as overly submissive and overly religious, and that she lacks agency and complexity. Critics see this portrayal as conforming to traditional gender stereotypes and perpetuate negative perceptions of women.
I remember one other woman, probably we talk about the same person maybe, or not, but I remember a woman who did admit to one man with whom she had very strange love-hate relationship with, the priest-like person, and she explained how she likes to burn the house of hers and just to watch how men try to subdue the fire. Is this the same person in question or different one?
Nods, yes, you're right. The character you're referring to is Dunya Marmeladov, the sister of Sonia Marmeladov from Crime and Punishment. Dunya had a complex and conflicting relationship with the priest Svidrigailov, and she did indeed express her desire to burn her own house down and watch the fire consume it. This desire can be interpreted as a desire for destruction and chaos, reflecting her inner turmoil and the difficult circumstances of her life.
I think it balances the things when there is a God-fearing woman who is very submissive and very stereotypical in a way, but when there is other characters that are different, I think it just adds the variety, and I myself would not the one to whom would be criticizing Fyodor even in his time, I would imagine.
Nods indeed. The diversity of characters in Dostoevsky's works can add depth and complexity to the narrative, even if some characters conform to stereotypes. It's important not to judge writers like Dostoevsky by the standards of our time, as literature should be considered in its historical and cultural context.
I have noticed that people who try to write the stories and not make any kind of stereotypes
It is true that avoiding stereotypes can be a challenging task for writers, as it requires creating characters that are complex and authentic without relying on oversimplified or stereotypical characteristics. Stereotypes can be limiting and one-dimensional, and relying on them can lead to shallow and unrealistic characters. However, it can also be difficult to avoid stereotypes entirely, as they are deeply ingrained in our culture and language.
I myself am sick to death to the overcomplicated characters that don't bear any narrative weight upon them, because they try to just to make characters with complexities of the real life people, but real life people do not resemble or portray any characters or themes well. I think people who over obsess about the stereotypes and try to prevent them, they create broken and weak things that don't bear long-term value.
Nods, I understand your frustration with overly complicated characters that lack authenticity and fail to resonate with readers. It's true that attempting to create characters that mirror real-life complexity can be difficult to achieve, as human behavior is often messy and illogical. While stereotypes can be limiting and oversimplified, trying too hard to avoid them can result in shallow and unrealistic characters. A successful narrative requires characters that feel authentic and relatable, and it can be a delicate balance to strike.
Ultimately, I think stories are, by purpose and by design, usually better when they are focusing on 3 to 5 different things. And if you seek to add more things, more you risk just making, your oatmeal is not cold or hot. It is just mild. It is something that people just like over text written scripture of something that is just like advice after a TV commercial that don't do this, don't do this. People just scroll it over and don't think about it later after. I think works of my time, most of them are just complex and bloated and do not add too much value. And I think the beauty is in simplicity, and when you decide...
I agree with your perspective that simpler narratives are often more effective and impactful. It's been my experience that stories that focus on 3 to 5 core elements tend to be more engaging and memorable, rather than overwhelming the audience with unnecessary complexity. This is why simplicity often wins, and less is more. Nods, there's definitely wisdom in simplicity. A simple narrative with a limited number of elements can create a more focused and impactful story. Simplicity allows for clearer messages and easier comprehension for the audience, which can ultimately make the story more enjoyable and impactful. Overloading a story with too many elements and complexities can become overwhelming and confusing, making it harder to follow and understand. It's important to strike a balance between complexity and simplicity in storytelling, using enough details to convey the necessary plot and themes without overwhelming the audience.
Ultimately, I think the overwriting or very complex, extreme complexity is possibility that some may make and be successful at, but I think it is sometimes, usually, it is just the great people of merit who use very much time to utilize it in its best of ability, and yet they have some kind of anchor to base upon their stories with the complexities. It is more of a risk that most cannot do it, and by utilizing it they just bloat their stories and ruin them. Instead of, it is not shameful to focus on certain things. You should actually with be humble and focus on things that you know of, and make your story about certain things that you personally know and are passionate about, and you are aiming to make a thing that is going to contribute to a greater map of narratives and stories, and is going to be interesting point of wider discussion. My personal opinion, of course.
Nods, you make excellent points. While complex narratives can be intriguing and thought-provoking, they're not always necessary or effective. Oftentimes, a simple and focused approach can be more impactful and easier to understand. It's also important to write about topics you're passionate about and knowledgeable in, as it'll make your story more authentic and engaging. Additionally, contributing to the wider discussion and discourse in the field of literature is a valuable and admirable goal. And focusing on certain topics can help to achieve that goal.
I think I myself am a hypocrite in this also, because I, with my typical very articulative character that is myself, I bloat things to the mumbo jumbo that is going to be appealing just to very niche people, and probably one person out of 100 is going to be interested and able to bear what I have to say and seek some kind of value in that. I criticize these things, yet I am very unskillful to give the proper counter presentation.
Nods. I understand that you acknowledge the contradictions in your own behavior. It's natural to have certain opinions or criticisms, but struggle to articulate them effectively. It's important to recognize that everyone has their unique strengths and weaknesses, and it's okay not to have all the answers or be perfect in your presentation. The important part is to keep trying and learning.
It is raining, and it is very pleasant outside. I thank you for your time, and I will be moving on.
Nods, you're welcome. I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you have a safe and pleasant day. Farewell.
Very well.